It started in one foot and my feet would change to purpley blue colour, ice cold to touch, kind of looked like they belonged to a dead person. That's when the fatigue started. And oh my gosh, my family couldn't hug me. It was so painful. Like if they bumped me, that would be it. Complex regional pain syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, PTSD, anxiety, depression, the classics. I was drastically different within 3 days. I was no longer needing the help of a wheelchair or crutches. And I think looking back, definitely something that was part of why I ended up developing the illnesses that I did.
So Chelsea has very kindly said that she would share her remarkable and inspiring story. So first of all, thank you, Chelsea.
Good. Thanks for having me.
So we were just chatting then, and Chelsea said it was many, many years since she did the lightning process. So I would like to hear the whole journey from fatigue and complex regional pain syndrome. But let's rewind it just a little bit to hear what was life like before.
Yeah. When I was finally diagnosed, I was a teenager. But before that, I'd grown up with my mom and my little sister and my little brother. And we'd been through quite a lot of trauma as a family. My dad passed away when I was 12. So my mum raised us on her own and she worked really hard to give us everything. I was the oldest in the family, so I also took it upon myself to help out as much as possible to make life easier for her. But I kind of think of like my childhood as fairly normal despite those traumas. Did my singing lessons and my drama classes and went to school and all of that normal stuff. I think I've always had a habit of playing down the trauma that had occurred in my life before I got sick as well. But I suppose actually in reflection, some of those traumas are things that a lot of people don't ever experience in their life. And I think that is definitely something that was part of why I ended up developing the illnesses that I did, because my brain was trying to keep me safe while I was busy ignoring what had happened. Grew up going to church and went to a few different high schools. I had a lot of goals for what I wanted to do career-wise.
And somewhere in the high school years, your passion for drama and singing clearly kicked in, because when we first connected, you had been accepted to NASDA.
Yeah.
But couldn't
Yes.
go through with that, which would have been devastating, I would imagine.
I was heartbroken. I had auditioned for NASDA and gotten in, and that was not the easiest school to get into. So I was very excited about getting that. So it helped that I had that goal actually, but I was absolutely devastated when I realized I wasn't going to be able to go. And singing in particular has always been my first love and so special to me. So it was really heartbreaking when I had to defer. And when my illnesses were kind of at their height, I couldn't sing anymore. And I was pretty determined that this was not going to be the rest of my life. I think a lot of people thought I was a bit crazy because I would still go to makeup sales and buy up stage makeup for NASDA. Yeah, I was still like watching musicals and trying to pick up new repertoire, and I was still continuing singing lessons where I could. I was like, I'm still going to NASDA next year. Even though I've had to defer this year, I will be well by then. And I think a lot of people thought I was a bit nuts, especially people who had been diagnosed with the same illnesses. They were like, oh, you're going to have a hard crash to reality.
So it might help just to briefly talk about some of the long list of things that you were challenged with back then.
Yeah, I think that the two big ones were complex regional pain syndrome and chronic fatigue syndrome. Before getting those diagnoses, there was talk of fibromyalgia, and then a pain specialist talked about central sensitization, which makes a lot of sense now. And they'd looked at rheumatoid arthritis, and just they'd gone through this like massive list of things, and I'd go to a new specialist who would go, no, this is what's wrong with you. And then I'd have doctors who were like, we can't see anything physically wrong, so it's kind of all in your head. And then I'd go to a pain specialist who finally gave me my two confirmed diagnoses and then kind of said, okay, start doing nothing and build up slowly from there, which was hard because I already felt like I was doing nothing. Yeah, I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, the classics. And there were actually a lot of different things written down on my file from different doctors. And I was told repeatedly, you need to just try this drug, but for now, don't expect too much, which was incredibly disheartening because I'd gone from being a very active, very involved teenager who signed up for everything, who tried to get the best grades possible, who had gotten into NASDA, and I was being told, oh, well, this is your lot. And I just went, that just makes no sense to me. And I always felt like there was something in me. Like, I used to drive my mum up the wall. I had this phrase, and it was, I could do an audition. And she never understood what I meant by that. And I just remember like trying to say to her, I feel absolutely exhausted and like I've got nothing to give. But if you told me that there was a Disney panel right there and they wanted to audition me for the role of Belle, I would find the energy and do that audition. Like I could find it and do it. And I like held on to that belief even when I felt, there were days where like I ended up in hospital and I was waiting to see neurologists and having scans and stuff. And I was surrounded by people who had cancer and we were all staying in the same ward, which was like quite confronting. I knew that I still had that inside me. I just didn't know how to get it back.
Wow. Yeah, and for those that don't know, complex regional pain syndrome is a horrible experience. It often starts with a little injury, an operation or something so small, and then swelling, changes in colour. It's baffled people for a long time. And a lot of people were told it's all in their head. And now we know that's not the case. It's neurological. It's real pain. Just can be challenging to do much. So people offer drugs and do nothing or start slowly, which is devastating for a teenager to be told, stop, do nothing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was heartbroken. My complex regional pain syndrome had started while I was in year 13, so my last year of high school. And it started in one foot, and I used to walk to school. And I didn't live that far from school, just a street over. I stopped being able to walk to school, and I was just really sore in one foot to the point where I was starting to limp, and I couldn't understand why. And I had lost a lot of weight. I was in unhealthy weight, and my feet would start to change to like a purpley blue color. And they were ice cold to touch. My feet kind of looked like they belonged to a dead person. And it spread to both feet, which was where doctors started to get confused because I had started to move up my leg, my left leg, and then I started to get out my right foot as well, which was not typical. And then that's when the fatigue started. I couldn't sleep, but then all I wanted to do was sleep. And then I couldn't remember basic conversation skills. I was forgetting songs I'd known my whole life. I could only get through about 10 minutes of a singing lesson before I had to say, I'm sorry, I need to stop. I feel like I'm going to fall asleep standing. And oh my gosh, my family couldn't hug me. It was so painful. Like if they bumped me, that would be it. Which was really frustrating because they were like, why are you so fragile? And I was like, I don't know. I'm frustrated too. And if one day I overdid it, went for a big walk, then the next day I would be in bed recovering. I remember one day my granddad had come to visit and we thought we'd go check out a winery. I was now 18, so it was like kind of exciting. I was like, oh, I'll try some wines. And the next day I was in hospital. I hadn't had too much to drink. I think I'd like sipped a Riesling. So yeah, it was very frustrating, especially because then I was having doctors say to me, well, just do less. I was like, surely there's like another answer. And I remember my mum was researching constantly, like she was doing a PhD. She was going like, okay, we've worked out that it's like a neurological thing, but how do we change that? Well, science isn't there yet, but surely someone's found it. There's so much research in the world. And like my social circle had gotten really small. All my friends had moved away and gone to uni. They were getting on with their lives. And I messaged a friend who I hadn't seen since like year 9 in high school and just checked in to see what he was up to. And he asked what was going on. And I said what I'd been diagnosed with. And he said, oh, I've got a friend who had that and they got well. And I went, are you sure it was the same thing? Because like apparently there's no cure. And he said, no, chronic fatigue syndrome. No, I've got this friend. They did this thing. I don't know what it is, but I'll put you in touch. And so I started chatting to this friend and my mum called his mum, and they had some good chats and we found out it was the lightning process. And I just remember being shocked because at this point it had been almost a year of just being isolated from my peers, in bed trying to get well and not getting to do any of the things that I love doing anymore. And I had started to get to a point where I was like, maybe what the doctor's telling me is true. Like maybe this is just my lot in life. And so when I heard, oh, there's a cure, I went, yeah, I was just so shocked. Like, nope, there isn't, because I would have heard about it by now. Yeah, and that's when we were led to the lightning process.
Well, I think when your mother first contacted me, you were in hospital. So we had
Yeah.
some discussions, and then I wasn't due over to New Zealand for a month or so.
Yeah.
And I think there was this time frame for NASDA. You had to make a decision where, are you going to be able to get in or not? You had to give them the yes or no. And so
Yeah.
you were so committed. You jumped on a plane and
Yeah. Yeah.
flew over to Brisbane to see me in Brisbane.
Yeah. And I had saved money for university. Like I'd had a part-time job since I was 12 years old, and I'd saved up money for university, and I'd spent all of it on medical appointments because we didn't have health insurance and the public health system is really slow. So I had paid for all of my appointments with specialists up front. And so we had no money left. And so I remember my mum talking to my grandparents and being like, can we just scrape it together and make it work? And I was going, oh, what if it's another one of those things where we try and nothing happens and we've spent all this money and all this time and I just get my heart broken again? And Mum was like, no, we're going to do it. It's backing the science that we've been reading needs to happen. And so everyone's saying it should happen, but it's not happening. And then she was like, there's one in Brisbane. It's like, I think it was like a week away or something like that. Like it was a really quick turnaround. And I was like, I don't want to call NASDA, and like, because they'd let me defer. And that was not something I even expected they would let me do. And so I was like, I don't want to call them and tell them now I can't come at all. Like this is my dream. And yeah, it was kind of like a whirlwind. All of a sudden we were on a plane and in Brisbane. It just happened so quickly. I'd gone from sitting for months going, what am I going to do with my life, to all of a sudden everything happening all at once.
And clearly found the determination to get on a plane, because even that kind of travel is huge. I know for my wife, she needed wheelchair assistance to get to London to do the lightning process because it was only available in London back then, which is why I think it's really important that people understand the science and they go, okay, this does make sense. There's something behind this. And luckily, our understanding of pain has changed so much. Even the last 10 years, it is radically changed.
It's amazing. Yeah, because when I would talk to people about this experience when I first did it, they were like, okay, you're crazy. And now people are so much more understanding, right, a neurological condition. And okay, yeah, it's very exciting, because for a couple of years there I stopped talking to people about it because I felt so disheartened by the response being like, well, you can't have been that sick, which was really quite a challenge, because I was like, well, I definitely was, and I definitely did the work to get well, because I think as well with how quickly it happened, it sounded like it was like a miracle, like a miracle pill, which in actual fact, there's a lot of work, but not the kind of work I was expecting. But like the first hour, I was like, oh my God, all of this makes sense. And I didn't fall asleep. I learned a lot that I still actually use, and surprisingly, has really benefited my career as an actor and singer and teacher.
Well, the spoiler, you've just explained how life has radically changed, because clearly you got into NASDA.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it was so exciting. I think by the time I did the LP and got back, I was like a day after the cutoff, and I called them. I was like, please, I'm well. Please let me come back. And then they were like, okay, we'll review your audition tapes and let you know. And I remember them calling to say, yeah, you can come. And I was just like, I have 6 weeks to get ready and go, which was crazy because I had never lived out of home and I didn't know where I was going to be living in Christchurch. And I was going to go and do this study where I was doing ballet, tap, jazz, singing and acting 5 days a week for minimum 7 hours a day. But I was just so excited. And it was awesome. And I had a great time. And there was so many challenges that still came up, but it was incredible because having this tool made me feel so much more ready to take each step and know that I could figure out how to handle each step, because it's almost like through the lightning process, I learned how to trust myself. I'd spent so much time listening to what other people said and trusting what other people said. It's like I hadn't learned to trust my own voice, which was something that the lightning process gave me. It actually made my studies so much better than what they would have been had I not gotten sick at all.
Yeah, what a story. There's a phrase in the pain world, which is motion is lotion. It's this concept that we need to move. It's a massive part of the recovery program, but it's not just motion is lotion. It's confident, joyful motion is
Yeah.
lotion. You need to understand why this can work. And so the confidence and the joy is such a big part of it. So having the science behind you and this dream ahead of you, just so powerful. So well done, you.
Yeah. Thank
Wow.
you. It was
So
pretty exciting.
yeah, I got an email from you. I think it was maybe a week, maybe it was even days after the training, probably days. You said in one of your success emails that you sang for the first time in 8 months. So
Yeah.
just not being able to sing is just devastating for someone who loves singing.
Yeah, it was. My singing teacher, she was incredible. She has inspired me in my singing teaching journey, but she was there from before I got sick, while I was sick, and afterwards. And she picked up that something was wrong before even I did. And she had been with me. She would come to my house to teach me because I was having a hard time leaving the house. And she would come to the house to teach me. And she saw me at that lesson where I suddenly went, I don't think I can do this. I can't remember the words. And then she came and taught me my first singing lesson post LP. And I just remember her being like in shock. Who was this person? And it was so exciting. And I had this new power behind my voice that I hadn't had before. And it was pretty freeing.
Yeah. Wow. And it's one of the things with recovery is people realize it's not going back to the old me. It is this new and improved version. Your mother emailed me and said, basically, thank you. This is a new Chelsea. I think I haven't seen this Chelsea since she was an infant. So pretty
Amazing.
special. Yeah. Yeah. So look, on this journey, you talked about the pain and the fatigue, but obviously with these conditions comes a wide range of other symptoms and issues as well. So for you, were there other things on top of the pain and the fatigue?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I was sexually abused, and there was a lot that came out of that. My brain trying to keep me safe in a lot of ways that didn't make sense to me until I was a lot older, and actually until I got married. And basically, like instinctively, my body was trying to keep me safe from ever being abused again. But that meant actually that it made it really difficult for me to share any intimacy with my husband. It was just kind of like my body would panic at any physical touch. So the lightning process is definitely a tool I used alongside going to physiotherapy. I worked with a pelvic physio. The big thing was, though, that my brain needed to understand that I wasn't in danger anymore, especially because it can set up automatic responses, particularly with a condition that I had, which was vaginismus. It was just as simple as like blinking if something moves towards your eyes. It was like this panic response of, nope, I've got to keep you safe. So stay away. And so when I started working with the physio, I was going, okay, how am I going to actually be able to allow my muscles to relax and do what she's telling me to do without getting myself worked up and stressed? And it was a slow, patient process. I did a lot of work with my physio and my therapist and using the tools I'd learned from the lightning process to help little Chelsea heal from that trauma and help my body to understand that we weren't in danger anymore and help it process what had happened, because this was, before the age of 5. And so, how does your brain process that? And so yeah, I used the LP hugely in that process, and it has made a massive difference. I am a very different person now because of that. And it was kind of a funny process to go through, because I had grown up in the church and there was a lot of, no sex before marriage. And so I already had all these ideas, made me feel quite shameful around my body and around being a woman and around sex. So the brain rehearsal tool I use quite a lot, and I found that really helpful, even for working out how I was going to talk to my medical professionals about what was going on for me, to make myself feel really comfortable so that I could go in and talk to them at appointments. So it's definitely not just been like physical pain that it's helped me with.
Yeah, that's so useful to share that piece, because pre-verbal trauma shows up in totally different ways that it can seem so illogical, and therapists can't touch that because there's nothing logical really. But when you understand
Mm,
that the brain's job is to protect, and it's been taking in information from in utero even, it learns and it learns and it learns in ways that might not seem logical. I loved your blinking concept as well. It's we don't think about the blink, and we don't think about pain or fatigue or muscles tightening up. That's just the brain doing it
yeah,
unconsciously. And there are tools
totally.
that we can use to step in and go, thank you, brain. I'm safe
Yeah.
now and I'm taking charge
Mhm.
here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
actually use it a lot with when I'm directing, when I'm working with other actors. And they go, I need to cry on demand. I'm like, we don't need to traumatize our brains to get there as actors. Our brains are so easily misled and take things on to keep us safe so easily. We've got to look after them, and we've got to kind of lead the way for them. I still love that phrase, the brain makes a terrible master but an excellent slave. I use it all the time. It's so true. And often I go like, what are you doing that for? We don't need that. And I go, oh, okay, you're doing it in response. Okay, cool. Well, we don't need to do that. I feel like I'm parenting a wee child, but she listens. So that's cool.
Yeah, wonderful. I think people often, when I talk about the brain, people often just make the brain the thinking organ. Thinking is the least relevant thing sometimes that the brain does. It protects our body, it controls everything.
Yeah.
And it's not smart. Our brains aren't smart, they're protective, and they're
Yeah.
highly biased by past experience. So we
Yeah.
can step in. Yeah, what a journey. Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that is very special to add that piece, Chelsea. So
Yeah.
you talked about the work that went into it, so it might be useful just if there are any insights that you took from the training or things that others might find useful if they're watching this.
Well, it's funny. One thing I kept getting caught up on was perfectionism. And I kept expecting myself to be perfect because now I had the lightning process. And so the moment I like started to get a cold or anything like that, like, no, you can't do this because you'll go backwards. So I think one of the biggest things for me was also learning to still be compassionate to my body, because I've always had really high expectations for myself. And especially pursuing a career in performing arts where panels are brutal, and you're expected to look and act a certain way and be a certain caliber of person if you want to even get a job in this industry. It was a very big challenge for me to let go of all these ideas of what perfect is while also training in this world that wanted you to look perfect. And it was helpful doing refreshers. And even the refresher that we did last year that you held online was so helpful. And just remembering that I'm also human, not a robot, and being compassionate to my brain when it's trying to keep me safe, because I guess growling at my brain for trying to keep me safe isn't gonna do anything. So I think that was one of the biggest things for me. It was just accepting that my body is still a body and I need to love it and accept it, and also be patient with it. If I have to do the lightning process and just patiently work through that and trust my brain is listening and the results will come through, then that's what's going to happen. So yeah, I think that's been a big thing, is like perfectionism and being patient, especially because initially when I did the lightning process, I was drastically different within 3 days. I was no longer needing the help of a wheelchair or crutches. I threw all my drugs in the bin. I, could eat whatever I wanted again, and it was incredible. I expected that now I was just fine and I didn't have to do anything else. Like, this was just me now. And so I would get very disheartened when anything would kind of go wrong. I go, why is this happening? I've got the lightning process. This shouldn't happen anymore, which I realize is all language that is not beneficial, because there's no shoulds or shouldn'ts about it. Our brain's trying to look after us. And I think that's the big thing, is knowing and accepting that the lightning process isn't going to suddenly solve everything. It is a tool, and you keep using that tool and you keep getting benefits from it, but you have to keep doing it. And that's where the work comes in. And that can be the challenging part, is sometimes you're sitting there quite comfortable in these habits that you used to have, and then having to spot them and go, okay, now I need to do the work if I want to get rid of those, or train myself out of those. So I think that's the biggest thing heading into this, is like accepting that you still have to do the work if you want to get the long-term benefits. and that's okay. Anything that's worth having has work.
Thank you for that. That self-compassion piece is so important, and it's often missed. And often the patterns that people have that often predate their condition are still running, and they take that into the training. And so a perfectionist approaches the lightning process with this attitude, which will get in the way of recovery. Or if someone has patterns of anxiety, that will get in the way of using the lightning process, because those patterns
Yeah,
of, well, what if it doesn't work for me? That's a stress response. So approaching it from a perspective of self-compassion changes everything. And this is just a
definitely.
brain trying to help. If something has
Mm-hmm.
happened in the past, which has the brain overprotecting me, thank you, brain. I'm going to step in.
Yeah,
And it's ongoing work.
yeah.
Well, life has changed a lot for you. I remember I wrote letters to your specialists, just giving them an update on progress and information about the lightning process. And I have never sent out so many letters in one go. It was a fortune in stamps back then. Um,
Yeah.
updating all these specialists.
I had to
But
get
life has
signed off
radically
that I was
changed.
well. Like to get to go to NASDA, I had to give them a medical certificate that said I was fit and healthy. And that was just the standard for anyone who wanted to go to NASDA. And I was like, my doctors are not going to sign off. They're going to be like, are you kidding me? Like, we saw you a week ago. You were in a wheelchair. Like, no. I just remember giving you that list of specialists. And oh my gosh. Yeah, that was a lot. Thank you.
Well, it was wonderful to do. Every time I put a stamp on there, it was a celebration for Chelsea. Well done, Chelsea.
It's so nice.
Yeah. Well, it is work. And you approached the training with a mindset which was impressive. And then you approached the work with a mindset which was really impressive. And, I don't accept everyone onto a training. I knock back lots of people because it is work. And I don't
Mm,
want desperate people. I want determined people. And
totally.
yeah, and you were determined. It was very clear, even though it was a very quick turnaround. You were determined. So
Yeah.
your ability to sing and perform returned to you. So what are you doing now, Chelsea?
I am, well, as of this year, I took a very big leap. Cody, my husband, was studying. He studied neuroscience, and that's because of the lightning process. And now he is working full time. So I went, okay, there's a little wiggle room for me to like branch back out and actually make art my career. So I am teaching singing at a studio called the Voice Lab. And so I have an anatomy based approach to singing and also focus a lot on musical theatre, which is amazing. I absolutely love it. I use a lot of the stuff we talk about in the lightning process in my teaching because it's amazing how much what we believe affects our singing, particularly when we're expanding vocal range. People, if their brain goes, oh, here comes the high part, they can't hit it. And then when we reframe it, it's amazing what happens with people's voices. Like it's just incredible. And I love teaching singing, especially studio teaching one-to-one. So I was doing that part-time for a few years, and now it's my main gig. When we moved to Dunedin in 2020, I decided I wanted to pick up my postgrad studies. So I'm doing that through the University of Otago. And as part of my postgrad, I decided to write a show. It's a one-woman show. It's called Therapy, about exploring trauma on stage in a way that keeps actors' brains safe, which is what I'm working towards in my postgrad. And so I wrote this show, and my best friend Mario wrote the music, and my husband Cody is our tech manager. So we did it at Dunedin Fringe, and then it won some awards. So then we took it on a tour earlier this year, and then we're taking it up to Auckland in July. So we're really excited. We've been offered a spot at Basement Theatre, which is a really cool spot to be, and we're very honoured that we got offered that.
Well, people can catch up with you in July in Auckland to watch
Yeah,
Therapy.
absolutely.
Before we spoke, I found your original application form to do the lightning process, and this is what I found as one of your goals. I would love to be able to get involved in stage shows and musicals. That was one of your goals way back as a teenager, and here you are. Wonderful.
That's actually epic. That is epic. And I love that it wasn't small. I was like, full blown musical, please.
Would you like me to read the whole list of goals?
Kind of, yeah.
Some of them are just so simple but important. Stand and sing. That was a goal. I want to be able to stand and sing, to have full days, to go to NASDA, to work, to get my license. And I would like to be able to involved in stage shows and musicals.
That's
Well
so
done,
cool.
Chelsea.
I've done all those things.
Tick, tick,
I've got
tick.
my license too.
Awesome. Awesome. Well done. You are an inspiration to me, and I'm sure an inspiration to many people that have heard your story. I know you wrote your story on my website years ago, and a lot of people read that and commented and linked to a blog as well. I think the title was Popping Pills Like a Rock Star. Yeah, a rock star. Chelsea, well, look, thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Monty, for behaving there in the background. Ruff.
Yeah, he got there. Hey, buddy, you want to say hi?
Thank you for sharing your journey. It is absolute inspiration.
Thanks. It's been awesome to catch up with you.
Might see you in July in Auckland.
Sounds good.